Okay, so welcome to a short video about it's about what cards you should be playing when you're playing six-handed no limit poker. So we sat down at a table. First thing you should do is switch chat off. Don't get involved in any of that business. Either have your stats on or your your options window, but definitely not your chat window. We're going to talk about firstly the cards that you should be playing. All kinds of poker, in terms of Texas poker, are really cards where you should be thinking about playing high value cards. I mean, poker is a high value card game unless you're playing something like low ball, but generally speaking, in this kind of poker, Texas Holdem, no limit, you're looking for high value cards. So if you look on the left hand side of the screen, you'll find this page on my poker site, www.mypokercoach.co.uk, and this tells you the expected return on certain hands. And if we scroll up to the top, we'll see that obviously ace is the best hand that we expect to get a return on. So for £100 we expect to get £262 back from the small blind, etc, etc. Don't worry too much about positioning in respect of EV, not at this stage. But if we scroll right down further to the hands that are really right on the very margin of being profitable, we're looking at 10-9 suited, Jack-10 suited, Queen-10 suited, etc, etc. If you're playing hands that are not on this list that's on my site, then you need to have a really good reason as to why you're playing the hand. And obviously that's the kind of thing that we would talk about when we're coaching. A6, for instance, in a six-handed game, lots of people would play it. No value in playing A6. Anybody with Ace 8, Ace 9, Ace 10, they've already potentially got you beaten. The worst thing that can happen when you're playing A6 is an ace flops. So hands like that you just totally avoid. Similarly, hands like Jack 5 here, I mean, there's no issue. There's no point in playing hands like that. What kind of percentage hand should you be playing on a six-handed table? Probably 20%, 20 to 30% of hands. So you don't want to be too tight, because when you do get a hand, then you'll never get it, and everybody will fold and nobody will want to get involved. So you need to be seen to be an action player, and the way we do that is we call things like pairs, suited connectors occasionally for one bet. If we're on the button, we raise. Now this is a good example of me appearing to be an action player. So I'm playing a hand, I'm going to know exactly where I am when I play this hand. If the flop comes down, I'm going to either hit it or I'm going to miss it, and I've completely missed it. So I'm going to check the hand down, and I'm not going to get involved in bluffing with this hand. The best way to get involved in bluffing is to semi-bluff, to have an opportunity to improve your hand in some way. Now again, this hand is not on my list of positive EV hands, but I would play it without any raises from an earlier position. I would raise it up because I'm on the button, because I've got that extra strength of being on the button. Obviously, because I've had two previous raises, I'm just going to follow this hand. It's probably way behind the other hands that have raised, so I could get lucky and hit it, but the odds on me doing so are not great, so just fold it. So when should we play things like, you'll notice that there are no small pairs on my list of expected value positive EV hands here. There's no small pairs. Well, obviously pairs can be very, very lucrative if we do hit a set on the flop. So when are we going to play pairs? Well, we are going to play pairs, but we're going to play them really cautiously. So for instance, if we're on the button, we're going to raise up if we've got a pair. If someone who we know is not particularly tight has raised up and we think they've got a marginal hand, we'll call it with a small bet for 1 or 2 bets. This is a good example. I'm in fairly early position here, so I'm in mid position. I'm going to raise it because I might obviously get a fold all around the table anyway and pick up the blinds, which is anyway I need to pick up the blinds in order to give myself that extra cash to continue calling with smaller pairs throughout the rest of the game. So picking up the blinds is an important part of maintaining my cash level so that I can make those kind of marginals. Now this guy here is really loose and he's raising up on the button every time, so I would not be surprised if my hand's the best hand. I'm going to call it. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to check it, and I'm going to, when he does bet, I'm going to raise because the guy has shown me already that he's calling with really marginal hands. And obviously the guy's folded, so it's probably a good way when you think you have a good hand. I mean, it's very tempting just to call, isn't it, when you've missed the flop. If you think you've got the best hand, there is absolutely no problem in you raising the pot. Just raise it to a sensible level, make it consistent with the story. If I had a jack there and I had a jack, ace, jack, then I probably would put in a raise in order to protect my hand. So make it consistent with the story that you're playing. Make it consistent. Now obviously I've got a pair of 10s here and an ace has flopped, which is not great for me, but I was the person that raised. I'm going to place a continuation bet and be consistent. I've still got the option to hit the to hit a 10. I'm probably behind now. There's 2 higher cards on the board. His bet's suggesting that he's probably got an ace. I think it's a weak ace, but is it my job to be the sheriff and call people down all the time when I've got a hand that's potentially weak? It's not my job to do that. Better just to move on. Again, difficult one to play, 9-9. Again, it's a hand that I'm going to raise with. The issue is really what you do when you miss, and obviously you're going to miss more often than not. I've got 2 other callers. Is one of those playing an ace? I'd be really surprised if one of those is not playing an ace. So the chances are that we are really behind in this game here. So let's just fold. You might have been a bit confused by the fact that if we look at the card range here, the EV value range, there are no small pairs on here because generally small pairs don't produce a profit. I played 6-6 for instance, and 6-6 generally doesn't produce a profit. Hands like ace, ace and 9-9 produce a very marginal profit over a long period of time. So again, you have to play them really cautiously. If you're playing 9-9 and overcards come, and they're the typical overcards that you would expect other people to be calling you with, then the chances are you're beaten. Do you continue to try and fish fish your 8 or 9? Well, obviously that's really bad practice, and that's why obviously the most common kind of abuse you hear in poker is, oh, you're a fish. It's not good policy to try and fish for additional cards when you know after the flop you're behind, because essentially the odds are against you and you only want to play poker when the odds are with you. Now again, this guy's raising the button again. I've got a much stronger hand, I think, than him. I'm going to raise it right up. I hope he folds because it's not a fantastic hand. I'd much rather see the fold, but if I do get a call, then at least I'm going to know where I am. Ace, 8 king, absolutely useless. No point in playing it. In a heads-up situation, might be slightly different, but in a 6-handed, absolutely useless. No, don't even waste your time. Again, the worst thing that can happen is a king comes down. Even a king 8 comes down on the flop, and you raise. Someone re-raises, you go all in, and the person's playing ace king or ace or king jack or king queen, and as the turn of the river comes, a higher card comes and takes your complete stack. So try and play high value cards. I mean, that's the message there. Play high value cards. Don't get involved in these kind of marginal hands. Just have absolutely no value whatsoever in the long run. And if you have this with you while you're playing as a kind of reminder to the cards that you should be playing, it will help you be a lot more disciplined, because you will be tempted to call that 7-8 suited when someone's raised up the pot. You'll be thinking, well, you know, if I just catch a 7-8 on the flop, you know, I think they've got ace queen or ace king, and if I just catch that flush, or I catch that draw, or if I catch 2 pair on the flop, I'm going to take their stack. The odds are so far against you to that, and even if you were to hit a draw with something like 7 or 8 suited, a flush draw or a straight draw, or even if you were to hit 2 pair, if the person that you're going against has got high value cards, they're still in a very strong position when all the cards are drawn that they're going to take your stack. So avoid it. Again, I'd rather play ace 2 than I'd play ace 6, because at least I've got the potential of a draw, but no value in the long run in playing the hand. Just throw it away. We're not getting too many hands that we can play here, but we'll be patient. And poker is obviously all about patience. Many players tend to play 3 or 4 or 5 tables at a time to try and stave off the boredom of a single table. I definitely wouldn't advise that to beginners. It's tough enough trying to concentrate on one table than try and concentrate on lots at a time. A few basic rules while we're here. When you're playing poker, a few things you should always do. Make sure you've got liquid refreshment with you. Make sure you're not playing while you're hungry, or never play while you're drunk. You need, just like any other mental activity that you're doing, you need to have full concentration. And full concentration means let's have enough fluid, let's have enough energy levels, let's not have too much alcohol in our bloodstream, because we will make ridiculous decisions, we will call ridiculous cards, and we will start tilting and fishing. Carry on playing and following our hands until we get something decent. If we get an opportunity to become cheaply involved in a hand, then we're going to do that, because again, we don't want to appear as though we're a no action player. We want people to think that we get involved with marginal hands, because when we do catch a good hand, we want someone to join in. So if we get an opportunity to play a hand in the next few hands, we are, because we need to see, to see some action, so that the rest of the guys and girls around the table think that we're actually getting involved. Fortunately, we're not getting many hands that we can play at the moment. I'm sure that's going to change. You will, by the way, when you first start playing, when you'll be playing for hours and you just will not hit any hands at all that are worth playing. Again, maintain your discipline. Don't start getting involved with marginal hands just because the action's happening around you and you're not hitting anything. Your stack's going down potentially because the blinds are eating away at your stack, and if you haven't got the funds for auto rebuy, then your stack's going to be going down. Again, patience. You will start to hit some hands by the law of averages. You will start to hit some playable hands, so just have some patience. Also, you'll have periods of time when you're hitting some nice hands and the flop comes down and you're missing, and the players around you are betting strong into your hand, and even though you knew you had the best starting hand, when the flop comes down, people are betting into you, and it seems to happen quite often. You tend to get frustrated and start throwing your money in. Play what happens on the flop. Don't play the cards that you've got in your whole cards. Play what happens on the flop. I'm going to raise this up because they're suited. These players, again, have been playing marginal hands, so a strong raise is probably called for. Again, if I miss on the flop, just because I've committed €9 to this hand, I'm still quite prepared to give the hand up. If I get 2 folds and I pick €6 up, that's fine with me. So I've got a caller I didn't expect, who's a little bit tighter, has been playing a little bit tighter, so that's a worrying sign. He's probably got a pair of tens, pair of jacks, possibly a smaller pair. Okay, now there's the potential for so many draw and flush draws out there. I've got to put a strong bet in here to protect the fact that I have got 2 pair. Anybody with king jack's going to throw it in. Anybody with a flush draw might throw it in, and I might have to commit my stack to this. Obviously I've got potential for a full house. We'll see what happens. Unfortunately, we brought the pot down, which is much preferable in that situation. Now I'm going to play 4 and 7 because I'm on the button. It's a hand which will produce some straights. It goes against, of course, my my discipline of playing these high value cards, but again, I want to appear an action player. I might get 2 folds, which is really what I'm hoping for. If I do get a call, then I'll know exactly where I am when the board flops. I'd much rather play 4 and 7 than play ace 7. And no, with a7 I won't know at all where I am. Now I've already committed to the pot. I've got another 4 to call, so I'm going to call it because the amount that I need to call to flop is a small amount relatively in terms of what I've staked, and I'll know exactly where I am after the flop. If this gets checked down, then I'll bet it, because what kind of hand would I call a raise with? Well, I'd call a raise with ace king, with king queen. I'd call a raise. So again, I'm going to represent that I've got a hand here, but I'm going to represent it in a way that is consistent with the story that I've got a strong hand. And I'm going to continue with this because my story is that I have a king, so let's continue with the story. And that often happens in poker, that if you are consistent with the story that you're playing, don't give up necessarily just after the flop. Continue with your story on the turn. At some point you will have to back away, you will have to slow down at some point, but bluffing is about having a consistent story, and that's probably a good example of that. 8-7 from an early position is not a hand that you really want to play, because you're so early on here. It's not likely you're going to be the only. You're going to have no callers throughout the rest of the hands still to be drawn, so it's a hand that you should be folding from early position. On the button, you'd probably raise it up. So just to kind of summarize on this, make sure you're playing hands that are high, that have an expected positive value over the long term. Throw away cards that have very, very marginal or poor kickers. A7, classic example. If you are on the button and you can raise a hand, play a hand that when the flop comes down you're going to know exactly what that hand, where you are, whether you're likely to be in a strong position. No question, this is a hand to fold. What also happens is that people tend to fold hands, and then all of a sudden the flop comes down A7 and they think, oh, I should have played the hand. Don't get drawn into that. The decision that you make before the flop is the critical thing. No matter what happens on the flop, it's a decision you make before the flop that's important. If it's a marginal hand, if it's a hand that doesn't have an expected positive EV, throw it away, and whatever happens on the flop, well, that's just tough luck. So ace-9 from the small blind with somebody limping in. Is it a hand I'm going to play? Really marginal. I'm going to play it, but I'm going to be really wary on the flop. Really wary on the flop. Because if I'm looking for a 9 to hit here. Someone's raised, there's no issue now about what to do. You simply fold and you move on. Okay, this is probably the last hand that we'll play in this video now. Obviously it's a raising hand. What do we raise it up? We typically raise it up 4 times the big blind. And a caller. We're hoping to see a 9. If any high cards hit the flop, then we're going to try and slow down. We can do something called block betting to try and slow, but I represent an ace here because if I had an ace, I'd play probably about half the size of the pot. If I get a call now, probably I'm going to try and slow down, try and put a blocking bet in to try and hope I can catch a 9. Well, 9 actually would have come, so that's a shame, but I've won the pot anyway. So I hope that instruction was useful. Please make sure when you play, if you are a beginner, use my chart on www.mypokercoach.co.uk. Use that chart as a good ref to the hands that you should be playing, and you will find that your poker stats, your poker profit will start to go up if you're playing the high. If you're playing high cards, if you're playing the cards that have a positive EV. So we'll just play out this last hand, and then we'll call this video to its conclusion. Again, really marginal hand I'm playing, and I hope that video is instructional, and watch out for much more videos on my YouTube account.